China's Xi Jinping touches down in Moscow for 3 days of talks with President Vladimir Putin, a trip Beijing claims will facilitate friendship, cooperation and peace.
China's President Xi Jinping has touched down in Moscow ahead of talks with Vladimir Putin. Beijing has called the visit a journey of friendship aimed at playing a constructive role in promoting peace talks over the war in Ukraine. It comes after China scored a major diplomatic victory by helping restore ties between arch-rivals Saudi Arabia and Iran.
They do want to affirm the strategic partnership with the Russian Federation to show that America's attempts to split the relationship and make the relationship costly for China will not work. They want to show the developing world that they can play a constructive role. They want to avoid economic and reputational costs in Europe.
Yet hours after the announcement of the trip, an international arrest warrant for Putin was declared, accusing him of the deportation of Ukrainian children. The White House has said Russia would use a ceasefire in Ukraine to rebuild and refresh their forces so that they can restart attacks at a time of their choosing. But experts say Xi's visit is unlikely to have any drastic impact on the course of the war.
Everyone to the rescue. The European Central Bank has announced a coordinated move with 5 other big central banks to ensure liquidity and prevent a global banking crisis. The ECB, the banks of Canada, England and Japan, the US Federal Reserve and the Swiss National Bank intend to alleviate market tensions and ensure credit supply. Markets remain jittery despite the best efforts of regulators to restore calm. Fears of an escalating banking crisis loom large following the financial problems suffered by the embattled Credit Suisse Group and the bankruptcy of Silicon Valley Bank in the US. After losing 25% of its stock market value last week, the Swiss authorities urged banking giant UBS to buy its rival. UBS agreed and announced it would take on the group for a sum of €3 billion. The Swiss government has welcomed the deal and says the collapse of Credit Suisse would lead to incalculable consequences for the country and the international financial system.
The French government will face 2 motions of no confidence in response to President Macron's decision to bypass Parliament to push through his unpopular pension reform. If the no confidence votes wins a majority, the pension bill will be nullified and Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne would have to resign, forcing President Macron to appoint a new government or call for early elections. Given the lack of public and political support for the bill, as demonstrated in the weeks of protests and strikes which have seen tons of rubbish pile up in Paris, the French government invoked Article 49.3 as they were not guaranteed to win a majority in the National Assembly. Transport strikes continue today and a 9th day of walkouts has been proposed by unions for this Thursday.
A new ship considered crucial to Italy's energy security arrived in Tuscany on Sunday. The Gola Tundra is a floating storage and regasification unit which will receive liquefied natural gas or LNG from other ships before turning the cargo back into a gaseous state that can be fed into Italy's national network. But people living near the port aren't happy.
La nostra richiesta è di mettere la nave in un posto che sia sicuro per la gente, per la popolazione e che non danneggi l'ambiente, come del resto è stato fatto anche a Livorno. Cioè a Livorno la nave l'hanno messa a più di 20 km dal porto in una zona che è abbastanza sicura.
Questa nave è pericolosa, oltre che essere vicina alle abitazioni, consideriamo che a Livorno è stata ormeggiata a 22 km e nelle 3 miglia circostanti c'è l'interdizione. Qui invece l'interdizione l'hanno messa a 150 metri. Quindi significa che abbiamo popolazione di serie A e popolazione di serie B.
But despite the protests, the Italian government says the LNG project is vital to replace Russian gas, which until the war with Ukraine was helping to power Italian industry. The ship's expected to remain in Piombino for 3 years.